Hey everybody, this is TJR.
And this is Superfan.
And we've got our little compadre here, our man of the hour, so to speak.
Mandalorian apprentice of the hour.
There we go. And we want to talk about Mandalorian Season 3. We just finished it. We have been watching the show since the very beginning, of course, since Season 1 began.
Yes.
And at the beginning of Season 3, I posted a video on my own where I used a headline that maybe was a poor choice of words, but I don't regret it, where I said, did the Mandalorian jump the shark? And the reason I said that back then was because we had this incredible ending in Season 2, this incredibly great emotional end of the story arc, where Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, completes his quest as far as getting Grogu back to the Jedi and to Luke Skywalker. And I felt like they ended that story. You know, they ended that arc. I wanted to see the series continue, but I felt like now we have to have some stories where we see the Mandalorian, Din Djarin, without Grogu. And we see him, of course, we might also see stories where Grogu is training with Luke Skywalker. Now, we did get some of that in the Boba Fett series.
Yeah.
We did. But to me, that was just a little aside to the Boba Fett series. And I really thought that by bringing everything back to status quo at the end of the Boba Fett series, they had kind of spoiled how strongly emotional that ending was. Now, and so I kind of opened I started the new season with kind of a sour taste in my mouth about that. And I remember we watched the first episode of the third season, and we both felt, in fact, you said it, you said you felt like you'd watched part one of a two-parter, like you needed to see the next episode before you could say anything, to really say anything conclusive about the opening of the third season.
Yeah,
and you were right, because I made the video, and I think that my sour feelings about bringing everything back to status quo right, at the beginning of the third season kind of soured me on that first episode. Watching it again, it was better than I remembered. Mm-hmm. But of course, watching the second episode after it, I agree with you. It was like they should have released those two episodes together to give you a stronger opening. I agree with that.
Yeah, and that may have been the plan.
It may have been. But that plan may have been changed, yeah.
Yeah, just trying to stretch the season
out, yeah, a little more.
But I mean, it is a space opera.
Yeah.
So to do it that way isn't necessarily wrong either.
No.
It's not the way you wanted it to be, but
I have a feeling that the show's creators probably wanted to release those first two episodes together, but probably couldn't. Probably Disney, the powers that be said, no, we need to keep this stretched out over 6 weeks. Who knows? But yeah, I really felt like we should have had a season where these two characters weren't together. Maybe at least by the end of that season, they finally come back together. But I really felt like the little sidestep into the Mandalorian in the middle of Boba Fett was kind of a compromise between the creators and Disney. Because I know that a lot of the viewers, after I posted that episode, said there was too much money with Grogu. And they couldn't not have the Mandalorian with Grogu because that's what audiences want now. That's become status quo. Yeah. And so I think there was pressure on them on the creators to say, no, get them back together ASAP. And so they were squeezed into the Boba Fett show. Now, this is all conjecture on my part. I could be totally wrong. But fans suggested that too that commented on the video. They suggested that idea too. It's within the realm of possibility.
But you also have to remember who was in charge at that time.
That's true. Yeah, I know.
He who shall not be named.
He who shall not be named, yes. That's a whole nother topic. You may be right about that. Had Bob Iger been in charge, it may have been a different set of decisions in regards to that. You may be very well right.
But it may be that Bob Iger was in charge and said separate the episodes.
Yeah, maybe so.
I could see him making that,
maybe so,
executive decision. I don't know that he's that involved, but
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, after I posted that episode, there were viewers who said that 2 years had passed between the end of season 2 and the beginning of season 3. And that time period with them apart, what we saw in Boba Fett series, that's all we were getting as far as that time period. I think we should have had a whole season of that, but that's the way it was. To me, it didn't feel like 2 years, but that's apparently what happened.
well, and there is a certain fluidity. We don't see all the time that's passing during the episodes or between episodes.
Oh, sure. Any TV show is that way because time is compressed, of course. But between seasons, it appears sometimes more time passes than we realize.
Yeah, and between storylines.
And that was true of the original movies, too.
Yeah.
The saga movies. In fact, it's true with all the saga movies. A lot of time sometimes passes in between them. But it didn't feel that way between season 2 and 3. Someone had to actually remind me of the fact. And I said, okay, I guess you're right. But it wasn't really made that plain. And it really felt to me like they had kind of cheated. But I also said that I wasn't going to not watch the show, that I'm sure that they would, for the most part, win me over with this new season.
And they did.
I will say yeah, but I will say that this was kind of it was a good season. It had a really good closing.
Mm-hmm.
But in between, there were some really inconsistent moments. And some of those inconsistent moments were still good. We had the whole plot line with Dr. Pershing
Yeah.
and Elia Kane,
Yeah.
which felt more like we were watching the Andor series during that time.
And they're not done with that.
They're not done with it. They left that open. But we did sidestep away for a little bit. And for a while there, it felt more like the Andor series. I mean, nothing wrong with that. Andor was a fantastic series. But there was that. But then there was that episode with Jack Black and Lizzo, where the whole episode, at the end of it, I felt like it was mostly a waste of time.
They're not done with it.
I realize they're not done with it. They may come back to some of these plot points they brought up. It may become more relevant later. I'll always give them that. But at the time I was watching it, it felt kind of unnecessary to me. You can disagree with me. I don't mind. But I felt like that episode was mostly unnecessary. But then again, like you said, they may come back and readdress some of those plot points, and they may become very important as in future, not only in this series, but they've got the Ahsoka series. And of course, their plan is to take all these shows, Mandalorian, Boba Fett, Ahsoka, and they do plan to build these shows to spin off into movies.
Yeah.
Is my understanding.
Well, and
which is a smart idea, I think.
Absolutely. And the thing is, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but you kind of, you always do this with like continuing storylines.
Yeah.
You do it with the Buffy. Well, what are they doing? What does that mean? Why did they do that? And it's like, just give the story a chance to develop.
I understand where you're coming from, but that episode felt, at the time I was watching it, like a total waste of time sidestep. Once again, they could prove me completely wrong with that. I hope they do. But I still, at the time, right now, that episode, like I said, felt like a total waste of time.
Okay.
For the most part. There were a few things at the end that moved the overall story further. And I say this in relationship to the first 2 seasons. The first season was very much like an old school TV show, like a 60s or 70s TV show, where you had all these self-contained episodes. You had one overriding story arc.
Yeah.
Kind of like a series like The Fugitive. You know, the guy gets framed for murder. He's on the run. While he's on the run in each episode, he encounters people in situations. He helps people out. And then the series finally ends with him catching the actual killer. The Mandalorian first season worked a lot like that, and I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed it for that reason. It was a very old school series with what was for the most part self-contained episodes. Yeah. Then the second season was more of a season story arc, and it was so strong and so consistent from episode to episode. This third season was still good, but it wasn't quite as consistent. I do understand that with things like Dr. Pershing, those storylines, they're setting up other stuff. I realize that.
Yeah.
That will probably pay off in other shows, maybe not even The Mandalorian.
Yeah, and you talk about that there was a 2-year time period where Grogu was training with Luke, and Ahsoka was there as well.
We might see a lot of that in the Ahsoka show.
Yeah, that may show up there. I'm guessing at least some of it will.
Yeah, yeah.
Where they go into more detail about Grogu's feelings because they're able to communicate with him.
Yeah. You're right. Speaking of communication, I want to point out something that you said while we were watching that last episode. Because before this episode aired, at the beginning of this season, the show's creator said that Grogu will talk. And when Grogu was finally inside of the robot suit, IG-12, yes, and he was saying yes and no, I remember you laughed and you said, this is what they, well, you did laugh. You said this is what they meant by Grogu's going to talk, and you felt they pulled the wool over everybody's eyes with that. But then in this last episode,
at the very end,
and I wonder how many people caught it, Grogu is staring, they're at
the X-Wing bar.
Exactly.
With Captain Carson,
I think it is. And forgive us, everybody. One of the hardest things about Star Wars is just all the character names. I know the characters by what they look like, but he's the Republic fighter pilot who helped out the Mandalorians a couple episodes ago. He's been in some other episodes. I think it's Captain Carter.
Carson.
Captain Carter's the Captain America from the alternate universe.
And that's his first name. Carson Avo, I think is what it is.
Well, hopefully the internet will clue us in here.
Yeah, they'll tell us.
But Captain Carson, where he's saying that Grogu really likes the trophies, and among those trophies is the robot head
for IG-11.
Exactly, yeah. And
assassin droid.
And at that moment, Grogu points at it, and he appears to have actually spoken in an alien language.
He did.
Because you mentioned it. He said he wasn't just gurgling or making baby noises. It sounded like he was articulating real words, but just in an alien language.
Yes.
And Din Djarin, the Mandalorian.
And I guess we should say Din Grogu now.
Din Grogu, you're right, Din Grogu. But Din Djarin just said to him, he's not who you think he is.
That's not him, kid.
That's not him, kid. That's right. And I don't know, I'm guessing that Din Djarin may not understand what language Grogu is speaking, but he understands the gist of what he's saying. But
he communicated telepathically with Ahsoka.
Yeah.
I don't think he spoke to her. We'll have to go back and take a look at that.
Yeah. Well, Ahsoka, I think, knew how to talk to him. At least communicate
telepathically.
Yeah, telepathically. And I'm guessing maybe Luke could also,
Yeah.
But clearly and I didn't catch it at first until you pointed it out. I wonder how many people caught it out there. Let us know. But I watched it again. It's like, it's felt like he was articulating words in a foreign language.
Those were words.
Yeah. Let us know what you think about that. But I wanted just to point that out. It was so quick and so subtle, you might have missed it if you weren't paying attention.
Yeah, because he was doing his own thing.
Yeah.
Eating his snacks as usual.
Yes.
Always on the lookout for snacks, that kid.
Yes, I know. Get your Grogu macaroons. Did they sell those at the park?
No.
Okay. Speaking of which, another thing.
They did have them for a while.
During that ending scene, we actually see the little guy. He's walking next to Mando, Din Djarin, and he's moving. And you can kind of tell he's kind of, I don't think he's CGI'd. I think he's a puppet on strings. Kind of moving along, as he's walking.
He was walking pretty quick.
Yeah. I have actually heard complaints on the internet, people saying, that he looks too much like a puppet. He doesn't look real. And I've heard complaints.
But you could see his feet moving.
You could see the little feet moving underneath, but it didn't look necessarily real, but I loved it.
It was awesome. And the thing is it felt like he was using his powers to move quicker.
He may have been.
And then he ran and jumped up on the chair,
where he's using his powers, obviously, to do that. Because he doesn't have the muscle strength to do that, but he can use his powers clearly. But to get back, I didn't want to get too far off this subject. I was trying to make a point here. A lot of people complain lately about special effects in these movies, saying that Grogu looks fake. He looks like a puppet. And the thing is did you ever watch the original trilogy?
Yoda was a puppet.
Well, yeah, Yoda was a puppet, number one. He was obviously a puppet. He looked like a puppet. But, like, look at the original film, like in the cantina scene. If you've ever seen the non-specialized edition, the original theatrical cut, you had actors in fake rubber masks in that bar. You actually had some guy with, like, a devil mask on. It was so ridiculous. And, you know, in the third film of the original trilogy, you had robots being tortured. I mean, there is a silliness to Star Wars that I think a lot of fans have forgotten existed or want to pretend doesn't exist. And that silliness is part of the charm of Star Wars. That even though it can have very serious, dark moments, it can have these just very silly things to it. Silly appearance, special effects wise, a certain amount of silliness, unreality, and just silliness in general. You look at the first film where C-3PO and R2-D2, when Darth Vader and the Imperial troopers are boarding Princess Leia's ship, where they walk across one of the hallways while they're escaping, and the stormtroopers are shooting, and they literally walk across while they're shooting, and they don't get hit. Not once. I remember sitting in the theater when that played, and everybody was laughing their heads off at the silliness of that. And yet people criticize later Star Wars for being silly and having lots of dumb jokes. Original Star Wars was loaded with that. And I just wonder what films did they watch that they criticize it for special effects that don't look 100%, for silly humor. I just wonder sometimes. Anyways, I just had to kind of say that when I watched Yoda walk across in that scene, because it didn't look real at all. It looked like a puppet being manipulated on strings, but it was so cool to see. It was really fun. And it was great puppetry, if it was puppetry. If it was CGI...
It was great CGI.
If it was CGI, then it looked like puppetry.
Well, and
which is nothing wrong with that.
We never saw Yoda run.
No.
We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. Yoda was always kind of... They always cleverly, in the prequel trilogies, always had Yoda floating on a flotation device or something so that they wouldn't have to show that.
Or on a backpack, which they have made a fortune on.
Yes, on a backpack. There was always some way they avoided that.
Back.
Yeah, very cleverly, because he was a puppet, and he was obviously a puppet in the original films. But anyways, though...
He's real.
Oh, he's real. That's right. I forgot.
About?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to mislead you. Yeah, he's real super fan. Just humor her. Anyways, though. But, yeah, I mean, it was a strong ending. And at one point, I remember you had suggested that the one Mandalorian who challenged Bo-Katan, I can't think of his character name. Right now. Don't worry about it.
Oh, yeah.
But when he tells the others to leave, and he's going to take command of the big ship that they have, that he was going to betray them. You had suggested the possibility that he might betray them. That didn't happen.
No, it didn't. But I thought that because of the Beskar armor that they found embedded in the ship that Moff Gideon was being transported on.
Yeah.
But that's now been explained because of the stormtroopers.
Yeah.
Beskar.
Yeah, their armor. But it would have been an interesting plot twist if he had.
Yeah.
That would have led to some real drama. I was kind of almost disappointed that it didn't happen, because when you suggested it, I thought, ooh, that could be really, really interesting and dark.
But at that point, we didn't know about the stormtroopers.
No, we didn't. We didn't know about it at that point. So, anyways, though, but I just thought I'd point that out. That was a real exciting possibility when you brought it up. I'm sorry it didn't happen. It would have been interesting. Still, though, I'm glad his character was not a traitor. I'm glad he wasn't.
Yeah.
In the end, because I liked the character. But let me ask you.
Mandalorians are better together.
Mandalorians are better together. Yes. Let me ask you this. One thing that I kept wondering, there were all these scenes where I thought, not just in this episode, but in other episodes, why doesn't Grogu use his powers? Why doesn't Grogu use his powers? He finally used them in this last episode.
It's a special thing.
That's one of the problems with Star Wars sometimes. there isn't any real clear-cut set of rules as to what the Force can and cannot do.
I think it varies from person to person. That
commands it
open.
Yeah.
To powers developing, and
I guess that's the best way to explain it. Yeah, because until Darth Maul, not Darth Maul.
Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren. Thank you. Until Kylo Ren,
the grandson.
Yeah, until Kylo Ren, you never saw anyone stop a blaster bolt using the Force, but he did. Everybody thought it was cool in the first sequel movie.
Yeah.
When he stopped the blaster bolt and stopped it in midair, everybody thought that was cool, but but no other Force user had ever done that before.
But everybody's powers are different.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess everybody's command of the Force is different, and that's kind of a cool thing, actually. But I still wondered, at times, why doesn't Grogu use his powers? Why doesn't Grogu use his powers? I guess you could say he seems to only mainly use them when it's a do or die situation.
Yeah, although I do love when he was he got separated from Grogu or from Din Djarin, and we're talking Din Grogu here got separated.
Yeah.
And he was fighting the Imperial Guard.
The red guards, yeah.
And he was running around on a light fixture above them.
Yeah.
Laughing.
Yeah, he was laughing. I'm pretty sure he was. That was kind of funny. As he was jumping around evading them.
And he was flipping. And
yeah. We both noticed the fact that in the previous seasons, whenever Grogu used his powers to any great effect, he would then collapse afterwards. This time he fell down, but he didn't completely go unconscious.
Before it would knock him unconscious in theory for days.
But in this time, when he protected everybody from the blast, when he protected Din Djarin and Bo-Katan from the blast, the explosion, he got knocked down on his ass, but he didn't pass out.
And that's the training that he had with Luke and Ahsoka.
Yeah, probably so. So, it was a strong ending. It was mostly a good season, in my opinion. It had some inconsistent moments. Some of those inconsistent moments were still good, but it just felt like we were in a different show.
But I think that those inconsistent moments are going to be resolved.
Well, I agree. The Dr. Pershing story arc, that's definitely going to come back. If not in this show or in another one, we're definitely going to pick up those threads for sure. To me, that was where it was inconsistent but still good. I just felt like I was in a different show, like I was in an Andor show. But like I said, the episode with Jack Black and Lizzo, it was inconsistent and it wasn't good in my opinion. But they may pick up what they brought up in that episode may come back and have more resonance later.
They've made allies of those characters, and it gives those characters the opportunity to become more important and to play an important role in the future.
One good thing I will say about that episode, though, as much as I didn't like it, there was one aspect that I really liked. When it was revealed that even though the repurposed Imperial droids were from time to time malfunctioning and causing havoc and destruction, the citizens did not want them decommissioned because they didn't want to give up their lives of leisure. They'd become too soft and complacent with the life of leisure they'd been given. And I thought that was a very important commentary about how we can let technology does make our lives easier. Our lives have been made easier by the internet. And to a certain extent, I think that some of us might be willing to accept risks or accept losses of freedom and privacy that we should have because we don't want to give up the luxuries of time that these devices give us. I think there's some important commentary there with that episode.
Yeah.
That maybe could have been better, made stronger, and may yet be in a future show. So here's hoping. I feel like I've said everything I wanted to say about this. Have you?
Yeah.
Okay. Let us know your thoughts. Season 3. What did you like? What didn't you like?
Can't wait for season 4. Can't wait for Ahsoka.
Can't for Ahsoka, yeah. And all the other shows. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. As always, if you like this content, hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification icon so you never miss a video. And thank you, patron supporters, for all that you do.
You are fierce and mighty.
Patron supporters receive exclusive weekly videos not available here on the channel. If you'd like to be a patron supporter and get access and get your name in the credits, please go to patreon.com/TJR the original. And if you can't, we understand. You know, you can give us a tip by just clicking the super thanks button, or just click like and share these videos with anyone you think might be interested. And overall, a pretty good season. Maybe not as good as the last two, but a pretty good season, in my opinion. And I think you liked it a little better than me.
Yeah. Once again,
we can have differences of opinion. It's okay.
well, you also have to remember he who shall not be named was totally in charge for this one.
Okay, you may have a point there. Let us know what you think of that too. But everybody, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.
Bye.
Say goodbye, little guy.